Hello, welcome to the Small Bow Podcast. This is a podcast trying to expand the definition of recovery, where we talk to interesting people with stories related to mental illness, sobriety, love, sex, food, debt, inadequacy, loneliness, and today, resentments. I guess that's the best way we could categorize this show. Our guest today is Cord Jefferson, who is our first three-time Small Bow Podcast guest. First time he was here was in 2021 when he was fresh off winning an Emmy for his work on the TV show Watchmen. Then last summer, we had him on again to talk about how he handled success after his film American Fiction, which he wrote and directed, won the Academy Award and a bunch of other awards. He won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay. Today's conversation, a bit more personal. In 2020, I think it was 2020, I flushed it from my memory. Cord and another friend of mine, Max Reed, who I worked with at Gawker, wrote and sold a television series called Traffic, which was sold to Apple, I believe. And since it was based on their time working at Gawker Media, and because I was still hypersensitive about anything Gawker related, still coming out of the trial, a little wounded by that, I took offense to it. I felt it was a complete betrayal. I was devastated by his existence. I didn't act great towards him or Max or anyone within earshot. I would let them know how mad I was about this. We talk about that today. He kind of has forgotten about it. I'm still carrying it around with me for some reason. I think that comes out. So this conversation gets a little chippy at times. I still have some work to do getting over some of my hangups and anger surrounding that stuff. It became abundantly clear to me after this interview, frankly. But I left it in because that's the whole point of the Small Bow, right? Is to show the process of me trying to become a better person. I know many people who read the newsletter and who listen to this podcast are also trying to do that. Sometimes you just don't look great trying to be better. Anyway, here's Cord.
Sleep with me, you know you should. Trust me, child, it feels so good. Bleed with me, and you'll see that I am all the things you need.
So, anyway, how's your day? 1 to 10, what would you say?
I would say today's about a 7, 6 or 7, yeah.
Is it like a 7? Did you say 6, 7? You didn't, right? I mean,
oh yeah, like I'm a tween, 6, 7.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah.
But okay, so why 7? 7 basically being.
I'm tired. I haven't been sleeping well. I got back from a long. I was in Saudi Arabia for a couple weeks.
Normal.
Some of my family lives there, and so I got back on Sunday, and I just haven't. It's jet lag has been killing me. I haven't been sleeping as well as I'd like. Today's busy. It's like, the end of the year. You're trying to tie up all these loose ends. You feel all these obligations. So I've been running around. I was late to this, as you know. I was 20 minutes late. It's been a. We all know. It's been a lot of traffic today. I just I've been better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 7's still pretty high. You're not like a 4.
That's the thing, man, is that I sort of like find it very, I think that like, most of the days now, I rarely go below like a 5, I think, these days. I think that
5's kind of bad,
5's, but I think that even, I just feel like I'm pretty even keel these days.
You're always a 7, or do you get 9s and 10s any days? Yeah.
No, I don't think that 9s or 10s really exists for me. I think I'm sort of like at a steady 7. I think that's
sure.
What's an I don't even know what a 9 or 10 day is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Less traffic, warmer out. I don't know. No work.
I guess. And how is work right
now? Okay, but I'm in this place where I had, in recent years, I've come into more success than I've ever had before and more money than I've ever had before. Mm-hmm. And those tend to, I'm learning, sap my drive. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I have, I'm right now, this year has been kind of like a lot of me just writing. I've been sort of writing 3 different things basically.
Yeah.
But I find myself less, I'm not as hungry as I was 20 years ago, this sort of getting older. I'm working slower. I'm sort of working less. And so I'm trying to get back into this place where I'm trying to write like I'm 27 again. You know what I mean?
What does that look like?
Wake up early and just really do the work, really focus on it, and stop, don't goof off and don't take trips and don't go to parties and sort of don't quit working at 2 p.m. I just sort of really focus on actually getting to it and writing again. I think that there's so much of, I think the sort of like, as you know, once, when you're a writer, oftentimes it's like your job as a writer, but then you hit this certain level of success no matter where you are, and it's like all of a sudden it's not just writing anymore. It's meetings, and you got to talk to this person, and you got to sort of like do managerial stuff, and you got to handle this. And so much of the job becomes detached from what got you there in the first place, which is the actual writing and the making of the thing. Yeah. And so I just want to get back to this headspace where it's like the writing comes first, everything else is secondary after that. And I think that it's been I think that I've just taken my eye off the ball a little bit because, like I said, it's success and money sort of sat my drive, and I'm trying to get back into it.
What if it's impossible to get back to just being a writer? Because it is, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think that it's also, I need to be gentler with myself because I don't, I am so sort of like goal oriented. It's like, you need to do this. You need to be done with this. You need to be done with this. And I think that it's okay to sort of take stock of the work that I've been doing and say like, there's I'm the only person who's giving myself these deadlines. I'm the only person who's putting these restrictions and pressures on myself. Maybe I need to be a little bit kinder to myself. Yeah.
I mean, the thing about what I'm curious about in terms of just like you said, you don't want to stop working at 2 p.m. Is that too early? Do you feel like you need to write all day?
No.
Okay.
I'm like, my best work is like 7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Sure. Yeah.
If I could just do that, that's great. The problem is that, like I said, I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm no longer up at 7 a.m. every morning like I used to be. Sometimes it's like 9.
This is supposed to be the opposite, though.
Sometimes it's like 9:30. Really?
Yeah. You get older, you start waking up. I'm up at like 4:50 for no reason now.
No, man. But that's because when I was a kid, I couldn't sleep because I had such anxiety and panic and terror, I think, is sort of like about my life and my career. And so now I'm just kind of, I'm no longer like shooting up. I've only been able to like sleep through the night in my adult life for the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not a...
Do you have a bedtime?
No, but I like to be in bed by like 9, 10 most nights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's ideal.
Yeah, the goal is to like be... But the problem is I've been staying up later. Again, it's like staying up. I've been taking my eye off the ball.
Do you like doom scroll and stuff like that? Is that your thing? Or?
No. I watch movies. I go out to dinner a lot. I go out to parties a lot. I think that that's another thing that I'm realizing that I don't really need so much of these days. I think that I'm a 44-year-old almost.
Yeah.
Single guy. And so I don't really, there's not much going on at night except for like my friends and stuff. Okay. And I've tried to stay off of, I don't want to doom scroll, man. I've tried to stay, I quit Instagram in January.
No, we miss you.
I quit. I've never was on TikTok or anything. I've gotten off Twitter. So fortunately, if anything, I'm scrolling eBay. I've gotten kind of addicted to eBay.
Yeah, no, I get it. What do you buy?
Everything. I would say I buy like 75% of my clothes off eBay.
Yeah. Oh, I did that too.
Yeah. It's the best.
But why do you think you do that? Why are you in this place right now where you feel like you have to change things though? You feel like you're in danger of sort of like getting depressed? Do you feel yourself depressed?
No, because I'm on meds now, doing a lot of therapy. So I find myself less depressed than I used to be. I think that, but that's like it goes back to what I was saying. Like now my days are 7s,
Yeah.
There's sort of like slips here and there. But since I've been on Zoloft, it doesn't really, I get into like some funks, but the low lows of like real just utter abysmal sorrow, that's rare these days. Which is again, I think for me a blessing, but also I think a lot of my like sort of frantic anxiety was a lot of my it's a lot of what gave me my motivation when I was a younger man. I was never like a huge that's not true. I was like a big boozer. I used to drink so much, and one of the reasons why was because that's how I felt comfortable in social situations. That's really the only way that I felt comfortable.
You've never heard that before.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that, but I've talked to people who were like, they thought that, but fortunately I never had a substance attached to my work. But I have friends who are musicians and comedians who are like, drinking is attached to their work. Yeah. Heroin's attached to their work. These kinds of things where it's like, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to do my work unless I have this substance. I never felt that. Yeah. I think that's sort of what it was for me. What really I'm worried about, like what made me do my work was that like just anxiety and panic. And like, you're going to be like a huge failure. You're never going to make any money. You're never going to be able to buy a house. You're sort of like never going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And so I think that panic and fear always used to be like what was a large part of what drove me. And I think that nowadays I've gotten rid of that through therapy and medication, and also just wisdom and sort of like the fact that I was able to accomplish some stuff that I wanted to accomplish in my career. And so I find myself, I don't know, I find the drive is there less. And I think that that is, I think maybe I want to change that because I feel like I've lost something, maybe I've lost a step, but also maybe what I've gained is the knowledge of a 44-year-old man that like, you don't need to be pushing yourself and hustling all the time. And there's more to life than just these kinds of things, and sort of like career success.
Well, you have success. So now you're basically at this cliff saying like, all right, well, what's next sort of situation?
Yeah.
How can I be a better person?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, about being a better person,
mm-hmm.
we have to talk a little bit about our own origin story.
Yes, please.
For this, which we met at Gawker Media.
Mm-hmm. AJ was my boss. AJ hired me.
Not really. You know who I told you, like Hamilton Nolan basically was the guy who told me, because you had just left Good magazine.
We were all fired. Yeah, we were all fired from Good.
Yeah. And Hamilton's like, here's a very thoughtful writer who's on the West Coast. And I'm like, great, let's go hire him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty much
great. And Gawker was like it was my dream job. I was really excited.
But why? Because I've been trying to, lots of people ask me, even while I was, especially in the aftermath of what happened to Gawker, what Gawker was, and I can never give a really good definition as to just what it was. So what was it to you?
Gawker was, it was to me, the reason that I wanted to work at Gawker was because it was the place that gave you the most freedom to do what you wanted to do. I had worked at a number of different places before then, some of them more institutional than others, but all of them had this kind of attachment to the past, and that sort of like it felt like they were operating by the rules of traditional legacy journalism. They were operating by the rules of the Associated Press. They were operating by the rules of the New York Times, both of which are great institutions, venerable institutions, doing important work. But I sort of wanted to be a part of something that felt like it was new and fresh and doing things that other places weren't doing or were afraid to do. And it felt like Gawker was that. It felt like a place where you could just really come in and just let your mind run wild and say like, here's what I want to do today. Here's something here's an experiment that I want to try. Here's a gag that I want to try. Here's a prank that I want to try. And some of them didn't work out all the time, but when they did work out, it was sort of the best feeling in the world. And I think that, for me, I just felt like when I walked in there, it was like this, I felt like I was surrounded by people who are just as smart as anybody at the New York Times, just as talented as anybody at the New York Times, just as gifted writers as anybody at the New York Times. But also, it was this kind of island of misfit toys. It was just people who sort of were capable and smart and funny, but they just couldn't fit into the traditional structure of some of these places. It was just people who, just for whatever reason, didn't fit in. And I always felt like I didn't fit in for any number of reasons in various places. And it felt like this is where you wanted to go if you were kind of like an ambitious outsider.
Sure. Was it journalism?
Yes. Gawker was journalism, but I think it was also not only journalism, but I think that a lot of what it did was journalism, yeah.
Do you feel like it was more like an alt weekly and more okay.
I think that for me, Gawker, like, if the alt weeklies were smart, Gawker should not have existed. Like if the Village Voice saw the writing on the wall, it would have been Gawker before Gawker, right? It just sort of like would have come up with an internet presence and sort of like just made itself into a website much earlier. And it was just, the alt weeklies were just too slow.
Maybe. I love alt weeklies, by the way.
Me too.
I don't share this opinion.
Not anymore though.
So, and then when you started to do TV work, you started to write your own scripts. And then I guess after Gawker had, was destroyed by the lawsuit, the Hulk Hogan suit, when did you think that you wanted to do a show about it? And how did that come?
So I was talking with Max Reed, a former colleague of ours. This is when I was still living in New York. So this was 2015?
Yeah.
Maybe. I had moved to New York to work in TV. And Max had just left Gawker.
Okay.
So that was 2015 or 2016?
I think it was
Maybe 2016.
No, because the suit was in 2016. So, 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Max and Tommy had left Gawker, and I was working in TV, and Max and I went to, I can't remember. We were just chatting one night, and it was like, what would be interesting? What would be a good show is a Gawker show.
Right.
And so we just started kicking around an idea of what that could look like. And he and I went and wrote a treatment for it. And then we started working on a pilot. And then we sold the show to Apple finally in 2018, I think, after 3 years of developing it. And then we got a room for it in 2020. And then we wrote the entire season. And then Apple killed it later that year in 2020.
Right. So when you say Apple killed it, well, is there anybody in particular at Apple?
So I will say that I this is all, I'm only saying this because I read this in a New York Times article. I did not read this. I did not get this directly to me, but I read in a New York Times article that Tim Cook had read that Apple was intending to do a show sort of based on stuff from Gawker, and he said that he would never allow Apple to do anything about Gawker.
Got it.
Because he hated it so much.
Yeah, and the name, but the show wasn't called about.
The show was called Scraper.
Was that the name of the?
It was a stand-in.
Okay.
Yeah, the website was Scraper, and there was some stuff that was taken directly from our experience Gawker, but a lot of it was just fabricated.
Right.
But it was kind of just like, here's what it's like to work in internet media in like the year 2010.
In the year 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was around then at that time.
Yes.
But so, quick backstory for me, when the Gawker lawsuit had happened, and I was a part of that suit, and many would say caused the whole entire suit. And after that, there was a documentary, there were lots of articles, and there were a couple movies in development that people had asked me about. And every time that would happen, I would always be portrayed negatively.
Yeah.
Right. And at the time, I could not handle that at all. It would always felt like it was like a personal attack against me. And I could never outgrow it. Right. I was going to be frozen in time as this person who ruined this great thing for people because they were an asshole. Right.
Yeah.
And eventually that came to a head when like there was a script called Just the Facts, The Rise and Fall of A.J. Delario, which was written by this man named Kenny Kyle. Right.
Okay.
And I wasn't aware of this. There was a couple others, like John Gary, I think, had done something, and like things were getting optioned next to the
I've only read one of them. It was not that one.
So when this one came up, I thought it was something completely different, but it turned out it was this movie that was based on me and written by this person who I'd never met, never interacted with. And it had also been purchased and had a producer, had a director, and was Seth Gordon. Do you know who that is? He did Horrible Bosses.
Yes, I know the name. Yes, I don't know him. Yeah.
But he reached out to me and said, would you like to participate in this? And this was this crazy making sort of, we had talked about this in terms of just like, this felt like, this was like an adaptation, sort of Spike Jonze, like, and I couldn't, he seemed to be very, like, he didn't understand why I was so mad about this, that he was just like, we're going to make a movie about this. And we're going to humanize you and all this stuff that was not something that I wanted to hear, but it was also because I felt like I lost control of my own story. And I was like, who's this Kenny Kyle person? Like, I'm a writer. Why can't I write this? And then it was at one point, I think he was trying to explain to me, it's just like, well, we can do a better version of you than you can at this point, is in so many words, as I was explaining it to me, which like infuriated me. And I thought it was not going to happen because I didn't participate. And then it like made the blacklist that year.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And the only reason I knew about that, you remember Winter Mitchell? Right?
Yeah.
Winter, she like texted me congratulations and stuff like that.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't fucking write this. And you're just like, well, how can that happen? It's got your name. And I'm like, I know. This is crazy.
And they did not have to purchase your life rights for that.
No, because I'm public domain.
Yeah.
It's a lawsuit that like lots of people have already written about at that point, right? But and it never ended up getting made. They offered me at the end, I forget which studio was going to buy it, but they offered me $50,000, 2 tickets to the premiere, like an EP, I think, credit or something like that. And then I just signed an NDA basically saying I wouldn't trash the movie when it came out. Right? It seems standard from what I've heard, right?
Yeah.
But it never ended up getting made. And eventually I spoke with Kenny Kyle and we talked, and I like him very much, But it was interesting having that conversation. We spoke over Zoom where he didn't see me as a human being, right? And he was doing, he knew I existed, but there's this version in his head that he was building a story around.
Of course.
Right? That, he felt proprietary about, like, and territorial about. It's this interesting sort of thing, right? But, as I said, over time, and we still communicate, but those were these moments that I kept running up against. And, there was an Esquire article written by this writer named Max Potter that I fully participated in. But I participated in it thinking that, this is the article that's going to show my side of things, and people are going to see me as heroic, and this is going to kind of lead to a book deal, and I'm going to get another job and whatever. Yeah. And it was not that. And it was the opposite. It kind of broke my heart in every single way possible and felt like the actual rock bottom moment of, my recovery at that point.
Yeah.
Even though I was sober at that point, this thing damaged me so much. So I had all of these sort of, moments throughout that process that I thought I was finally past. And then I heard that you guys were doing the show and I reacted poorly. I forget the name. I called you over text message, but I was trying to think. It was like a silly name.
I don't remember.
Yeah, no, something.
You called me you called me a name?
Oh, it was like ass face or something. I mean, it was.
I don't remember. I can believe it.
It was not something that was. It was clearly I was just rage typing.
Yeah.
Trying to think of something really artful, and you're just like, all right, man, whatever. When you want to talk, you're done. You're done having this moment. We're going to talk about later. Which is fine. Max, I just ignored his calls. But altogether, I was like, I know you're not running shit here, man. I'm going to talk to the Hollywood guy.
I don't remember though. See, that's how quickly it was under the bridge for me. I don't remember it.
But the thing that made me react the way I did was because I carried all of this sort of like residual resentment from all of those other things.
Of
and
course.
That this felt like it didn't acknowledge that part.
Yeah.
And I wanted my peace and I wanted to move on.
Yeah.
And that this was just going to reopen all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's happening and then I'm not participating in it at all.
Yeah.
Haven't been consulted. It just felt like this gross betrayal of all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it was through that moment that I began to see like, oh, well, they worked there too. They're doing a story that's not about you. It's not called The Rise and Fall of H.A. Hilario.
Exactly.
As much as I think it is in my head.
Yeah.
But, when you were putting this stuff together, like how much of this, I never read your guys' story, your show, but what were you trying to achieve with it? Like, what was the goal? Were you trying to just do, this is like Mad Men, but for blogging? Is that what it is?
I would say, in sort of like in the most basic way, that's what the show could be about. But I think that what we wanted to do, because as you said, we worked there. So there was 4 of us on the show who had worked at Gawker. It was me, Leah, Max, and Emma. And so we had all been there.
Should we say their last names so people can Google?
Sure. Emma Carmichael, Leah Beckman, Max Reed. They were in the room. And so all of us had sort of the equivalent feelings. Well, I don't know. Maybe you had nothing but negative feelings about Gawker at the end, but we all had sort of like mixed feelings. We all had feelings where it was like it was a tremendous place to be sometimes, but then sometimes it was a horrible place to be.
Yeah.
Particularly for Emma and Leah, they had a lot of stuff that they wanted to exercise about what it was like to be a woman there, and sort of and that they hadn't discussed really before publicly, and sort of the ways that everybody thought, oh, Gawker's this meritocracy where it doesn't matter. It's like, actually, Gawker had some issus with women, right? Sort of Nick Denton had some issues with people of color, right? These are sort of like things that we all know having worked there. But these weren't necessarily things that were out in the open. So I think that what we wanted to do was take, everybody had this sort of, particularly towards the end, I think nowadays it'd sort of like people would be singing a different song considering where everything's gone. But I think at the time, you had kind of a lot of people dancing on the grave of Gawker, It sort of felt like it wasn't just Hulk Hogan and Peter Thiel, it was media in general. There was a lot of sort of media people who we had seen over the course of years who were sort of finding a lot of joy in the downfall of Gawker. And so we wanted to take this thing that we knew was largely reviled and kind of let people in on let them in behind the scenes and say, like, here's what you think was going on, but like, here's what's actually going on. And it's neither as bad as you think it is or nor as good as you think it is. We had this idea that, we started the pilot starts with this Janet Malcolm quote that says, every journalist who's either not too full of himself or something to see the truth, understands that what he does is morally indefensible. And sort of we were interested in this idea
Who's
that
Janet Malcolm?
she used to write for The New Yorker. She's a New Yorker journalist.
And The New Yorker is what?
She wrote this book called it's from this book called The Journalist and the Murderer that she wrote about being a journalist. And we're interested on this idea that like so many stories when it's about journalism, it's like they're always heroes.
Yeah.
It's The Post or All the President's Men or Spotlight. Sort of like it's these sort of like these heroes who are just always speaking truth to power. Right. And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's like that. But what about when you're like starting a Kickstarter to buy a videotape from drug dealers, right? It's sort of like that is the kind of thing that you don't really see. And that's the kind of thing that's like, well, this is morally questionable. I don't know if this is, they're going to give drug dealers $150,000. Like, is that good? Like, I just think that we were interested in kind of the ways that journalism was happening now and the ways that things were happening when we were working there, and interested in the kind of people that we were working with. And there was a lot of really great characters. And so, you know, I think what we set out to do was we sort of wanted to show, because when we were starting it too, it's kind of like we were really started working on it in the middle of the first Trump presidency. And so we also wanted to write something that kind of gave a perspective on how we ended up where we are now. And I think that you can, for instance, I think you can draw a direct line between Peter Thiel and Hulk Hogan suing Gawker out of his existence, and like President Trump now trying to sue the Wall Street Journal for $300 million, right? I think that sort of like that was Peter Thiel killing Gawker.
About how to do it.
Yeah, it was a test balloon of like how to destroy things that you don't want people to talk about. And so that was, we also wanted to just, I think, sort of have people consider the way that kind of the attacks on Gawker have molded and have morphed into just attacks on journalism in general. And I think that there's a very direct line between those two things. So yeah, I think that ultimately the show was like, we wanted it to be Mad Men, we wanted it to be fun and young people having fun in New York. But, you know, we also wanted to let people into this thing that a lot of people had opinions on, but most people didn't really understand what it was actually like day to day there, you know? And I think that we wanted to just give an accurate assessment of what it was and the absurdity that took place there, but also, you know, some of the great stuff that took place there as well.
Sure, yeah.
And I understand that, but that's the you saying that, well, I'll leave it there. We can sort of like talk about, I'm sorry, I've been rambling on.
No, it's fine. No, I fell asleep hours ago just listening to you talk about journalism. What are you talking about? No, but I think that because I always talk about this moment because it was so early in my recovery too, that all this stuff was happening. And that I was not drinking, but I was not sober, right? Because I was so preoccupied with what this was doing to my life, right?
I don't know. What do you mean you weren't drinking, but you're not sober?
There's a thing called emotional sobriety, right? Which essentially just means if you're not emotionally sober, you're still kind of a drunk without drinking, right?
Yeah.
You are a menace to everyone around you, kind of.
Yeah.
And you're very preoccupied with yourself and not caring or considerate about other people. And I was very much kind of made, and this is, you know, not to be glib or cute about it, but I was making Hulk Hogan my higher power, essentially. Just like, you know, I needed all this stuff I needed to be free from that before I could really start my own healing. So I was kind of outsourcing all of my sobriety to whatever was going to happen after the loose ends of the trial were tied up, which, you know, went on for a couple of years, even after I get out of that courtroom. So it felt like I was constantly being attacked, or it felt like anybody who was going to interview me was really skipping over the fact that I had a life outside of there, that I was kind of, you know, healing, building a life, building a family.
Yeah.
Nobody seemed to want to acknowledge that, right?
I think that is, I understand why. I understand how hearing about the show could have upset you at first. I think, though, that, you know, I think the difference was that we had been there. We sort of like knew what we knew what was going on.
Right.
We knew you. We loved you. Nobody in that room disliked you. Everybody sort of, I think all of us, we may have had different difficulties at work, but sort of everybody cared for you as a human being and sort of understood that you were changing your life. So I don't think that we ever wanted to humiliate you or embarrass you.
Right.
Everybody was a composite. That character was not you. It was sort of like there was a character who was the boss of everybody who did a lot of drugs and alcohol, but like it wasn't exactly you. It was sort of like we had changed a lot of different sort of like
were they
pieces.
Was it a little Italian fella?
He was an Italian fella, but he was from Baltimore, no longer from Philly. His name is Richie Russo. But yeah, it wasn't a one-to-one.
Right.
Every character was really there was composite. There was, a character that was a composite of Emma.
Yeah.
There was a character as a composite of Leah. There was a character as a composite of me. And sort of like that was really the eyes and ears into the world were really sort of the character that was me. And Eric his name was Eric and his boss was Richie. And sort of like you entered, basically if there was a Don Draper in the Mad Men analogy, he would be the Don Draper. And I would say that your character would be more like the Roger Sterling, right? Sort of the where it's he's there and he's his boss and sort of they work together, but it wasn't sort of like revolving around that character by any means. But again, like I just think that like being the main character of the internet is like a nightmare. And I think that sort of like feeling like the entire world is looking at you and judging you is a nightmare. And I can see how in the midst of all this, hearing that like, oh, like there's all these vultures picking apart my life. And now my friends are doing it too. Now my sort of like these guys that I was like considered close friends that I've known for a decade or longer, they're taking part in this as well. I can understand why initially that might frustrate you, but I would hope that if you read the scripts, I think you would sort of see that that A, it was sort of pretty accurate to what's going on, but B, any sort of anything that that the character that sort of you resembled at all was put together with a lot of love and consideration. It wasn't sort of let's try to tear apart this guy's life for entertainment. Does this make sense?
Yeah, of course. What's interesting to me is that I still carry this, very frustrating resentment about, Max Potter wrote the Esquire, and there's David Folkenflik. I think he's at NPR. NPR media reporter, and I don't know why. Right? It's not like they did anything that was beyond the pale or had done anything unique, but I think those guys in particular, I felt like looked right through me. Right?
Yeah.
And it was some sort of tone or some sort of version of me that felt very unfair. And that was the part that I think kind of really took me back to a place where it was just like, oh, these guys aren't ever going to let me be anything different. Right? I always tell the story about David Folkenflik that when, he had reached out to me, and he'd reached out to me a couple of years, I think, after the trial was over, but he'd called me because like he'd gotten in a Twitter fight with Tom Skoka or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And he was calling me to fact check some of the shit that he had said about me.
Yeah.
But didn't really tell me the origin story of it. And, he got everything wrong, but he was very presumptuous and kind of like a little condescending, but then that was expected. But then he kind of asked me at the end of our conversation, so what are you up to now? And I was like, I'm starting, I'm going to try to do a book. I'm like working on a few other things, but I have a baby. I'm with Julianne Smolinski, who Julianne knew him. And his reaction, and then this is the part that I hear like at night or like the negative voices in my head. He said something along those lines, "Oh, I didn't know that." And then, and it was just so judgy. And then when we were getting off the phone, he's just like, "Okay, I gotta go take care of that baby." Right. And
ooh. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I will never, ever, I'm trying to get rid of that voice. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm still not there yet. The
Take
more
care
I
of
talk,
that baby. Ooh, I mean, I can understand that.
Well, because it's just like, well, you're not equipped to have that. Please don't leave it in the road, right, or something. I don't know what he was trying to say with it, but it wasn't. He seemed really disappointed at like Julianne for one thing. I heard that, but then it was like, oh, this poor kid, should I call child protective or whatever?
Yeah,
but. And I just, whatever that tone was, that was what I was feeling a lot. And, he became kind of just my composite of everyone who was ever going to write about this or judge me, that's what they were thinking of me.
Yeah.
Right. And it was similar to Max Potter, but not as much shit with him. I mean, he was just a guy that left me in Florida, even though we were talking out in LA. He did the whole story that was basically me in rehab.
Yeah.
And in outpatient.
Yeah.
And I was so frustrated because, Julianne was pregnant. I'd had a job. I was living in LA. None of that stuff was in there. Right. Yeah. So it felt like that was erased.
Yeah.
That part of me. Or that wasn't the story. It was something along the lines he was just, well, that wasn't the story that we were telling, but that was who I was at that point, right? And it was just him retracing like what happened to Gawker and making it correlate with my drug use at that time, or drinking or whatever, and having to kind of interview people and basically be like, well, how fucked up was he? And then you know, take their little anecdotes about the experience and put that in there, which is really a crass thing to do for anyone who's in recovery for one part of this. But it's also, I mean, there are astronauts that are a lot drunker than I was, for Christ's sake. They're like, they're like, I could fucking blog. Sorry, man. Like, it's not like I was like pressing buttons and the whole thing collapsed and just like Hulk Hogan's dick came on the screen, right? But like that was the part that I thought was a little unfair for anyone that was in recovery. It was just like, okay, this is not a one-to-one thing, right? Yeah. This is not, you get addicted to something and then a company gets destroyed, right? Yeah. But it was also like, man, this was hard stuff to go through, and just to kind of put it out there without any sort of consideration for at what stage I was in this process.
I think that, so I will say this. I think that you, this is an interesting conversation around Gawker. I remember Alex Perrine, who also used to work at Gawker, telling me something once where he said, no matter what you write, there's going to be people who dismiss it because it's published on Gawker. He said you could write an article that would be just at home in the New York Times and the New Yorker, and there's going to be people who say like, oh, it's at Gawker, I'm not reading that. Yeah, exactly. Or they're reading, they're like, this is stupid garbage. Right. And so I think that what you were describing was something that everybody who worked at Gawker experienced to a certain extent, which is just kind of like a general kind of like sort of skepticism of the entity and just the people there in general. Yeah. And I think that you sort of suffered that on a much bigger stage than anybody else. And I think that there is and I think that something else that was going on was that Gawker had been so antagonistic with other outlets and with other people and media people. And so, once the spotlight is on Gawker
Sure.
and the people at Gawker, people are going to delight in
This is
that because it's
karma
like,
payback.
oh my
Yeah,
God,
sure.
this is already, and I think that was also,
Yeah.
was just sort of like seeing you who had been kind of this like, the sort of like merry prankster leader of this like island of misfit toys, or like the captain of this pirate ship.
This Italian
Sort of
fellow from Baltimore.
Yeah, this Italian fellow from Baltimore,
Yeah.
who's like getting excoriated in the public eye.
Sure.
There's also, I think, sort of like some of that just people are just feeling the Schadenfreude of like, this is great,
Yeah, for sure.
Gawker, and, I wrote a lot for the internet. So I wrote for Gawker, I wrote for Good, as you said, I wrote for The All, right? These kinds of outlets were places that you could find your own voice.
Yeah.
You didn't need to, when you work in the New Yorker, you find the New Yorker's voice. When you work in the New York
Right.
Times, you find the New York Times voice. You don't
Yeah.
find your voice. And
Right.
there used to be this time when I was coming up where you could just write for a bunch of different places that let you be you. And I think that was incredibly important to
Yeah.
me becoming a writer. Was it like letting me be me, despite the fact that I was writing for this institution? The institution
Right.
was like, what we want people to do is be themselves. So
Yeah.
that was important.
But I think it's also the difference between that era and, some would say like the Substack era. What was cool about Gawker was it was the shared experience. There was like a newsroom,
Mhm.
right, to it. There was a camaraderie there, which I think that, what was, I worked at Deadspin for almost 4 years. And like
Mhm.
I was kind of the longest tenured editor there.
Yeah.
But my 1 year at Gawker was actually just like the most important time for me because it felt like, I'd finally working with all the people that I wanted to get better from. I was just
Mhm.
like, okay, like, you could go down that list of who was there when I left. And I
Yeah.
mean, there were like 7 editors on that
Yeah.
staff, right?
Yeah.
And that's incredible, especially just like, who from like, that graduating class between 2010 to 2016. I mean, they're all over every sort of high level of media right now,
Yeah.
right? So there wasn't, it wasn't just bloggers. I mean, they were,
Yeah.
everybody was an excellent thinker. Everybody was an excellent storyteller. Everybody was an excellent sort of, colleague. And, those are the stuff that, I think that it's tough to teach, right? I mean, you have to actually have
Yeah. I think that what we had
that.
a lot of was righteous anger. And I think that is going back to sort of like what I was saying that I have less of nowadays, whether it's stamina I have or energy or
Yeah.
just the sort of like will because I have
Right.
some success and some money. What I did have a lot of, I didn't have a lot of success or a lot of money when I started. And what I had a lot of though was righteous anger and just
Yeah.
feeling like I sort of like have something to say and I want to sort of like get in there and say it. And it felt like Gawker was a place that allowed you to be angry.
Do you have resentments still?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, name them.
Resentments? Oh my God, so many. I still have issues with my father.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, his inability to teach us anything about emotions, my
Right.
brothers and I. He was raised us to be very sort of like stoic men who
Yeah.
don't cry and don't feel things.
Wear socks.
Don't wear socks.
Yeah.
That one's good. I maintain that one. But he, although he's getting better, he's now in therapy. I convinced my dad
Yeah.
to go to therapy at the age of 83. So he's getting a little bit better, but still difficult. I think that I think that I just have, my resentments are just kind of, I think that I feel resentment more toward like institutions and systems than
Mhm.
people. I think that I'm sort of like over being mad at just like the general citizen. And I think that the problem is that I think my resentments are much bigger and makes them more unwieldy and difficult to solve.
Sure.
I feel resentment about, it's like the criminal justice system. I feel resentment over the Supreme Court. Sort of like, I feel resentment over these kinds of like massive things on a day-to-day level. I actually find that I'm I don't know, like I feel like a pretty good sense of community with like
Sure.
the day-to-day human being. I'm sort of like pretty mellow.
Well, I mean,
and
that's
relaxed.
not great for this show. I was asking specifically,
What do you want?
I want resentments of people, man.
You want specific resentments of people?
Well, I'm saying I feel like all
You
the
want me to talk about?
I don't need you to talk about that in particular, but I'm saying if there were others, it was like a safer space for that. Because this is why. I mean, and sure, you have all those. Those are nice resentments. The criminal justice system.
Yeah,
sure.
but it's
bad
true.
news. Great,
But it's true.
I get it. But I'm saying that that's stuff that can be kind of put in the category of like a healthy resentment. I think that's the righteous anger.
So, like, what's an unhealthy resentment?
Like I said, the Max Potter, the David Falcon. Those are these things that I carry with me that are silly. Like I really have
But
nothing
I don't think
personal.
I don't think that's silly.
Oh,
Him
it
sort of
is-
like
it's-
saying,
it is drowning.
"Take care of that kid." That's not.
He
That's
said, take care of that baby, not
Yeah,
that
that's
kid. It was a
annoying.
baby. He was
That's
a little.
annoying.
Ozzy was a little boy, a
I
little
understand what
baby
you're
boy.
saying.
at that
Okay,
point.
so like, but what are these minor niggling things that I'm just like, ooh,
that I have made so much larger into something that I can actually reach for any single hour of the day, and it can take me out of 3 hours of the day where I can become preoccupied with it. I can have these revenge fantasies about these people.
okay.
Like those are the unhealthy resentments that I have to kind of work through, and I almost apply my recovery and my program, and those are the people that pop up for me all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have what's a personal resentment that I feel that knocks me out of, that's like sort of like attacks my sobriety, but not with alcohol.
You
It's
don't
sort of like
shit
emotional
talk
sobriety.
people. Like you're not a shit talky guy.
No, it's
But I
rare.
have heard you kind of just like, get like a little bit like definitive about your opinion about certain people
Yeah.
at certain times.
Yeah.
And most of it stems from the fact that of what they have kind of thought about you.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say this. I have. I won't say his name, but I have a resentment of this guy that you know. You and I have discussed this.
Sure.
And what this guy did, I'll say firstly, this guy was a few years ago. This guy was in Los Angeles, and I bought him a beer.
Yeah.
Because there was a big group of us out at this bar, and I was like, oh, I'll buy this guy a beer. And then I go and we're not close, but it's just like, okay, I'll be cordial with this person. And I go and make American Fiction, and there was this review of the film, but it wasn't really a review of the film; it was a review of me.
Right.
And it was kind of, the first paragraph was a review of the film and it shit on the movie, and then the second paragraph was kind of a review of me. He said, Cord Jefferson is, I'm going to paraphrase, but it said, Cord Jefferson is one of those writers who's had a blessed career, or something along those lines. But the phrasing was has had a blessed career, sort of like has had a charming career, sort of charmed. And I remember thinking, like, you can say whatever you want about the movie. You can say whatever you want about the speech that I gave. I don't care. But to say has had, as if I haven't worked, for literally over 20 years to amass a writing career.
Sure.
That if sort of like it has had, as if there was some genie that came out and sort of like waved the wand and sort of like sprinkled me with dust. And it's like, now you get this. That was the sort of like thing that I was like, go fuck yourself. Like that, it is the, I think the thing that really, really, so I think that if my personal resentments often stem, I think from, there are people, I think, who look at me, who assume that life has been very easy for me.
Sure.
I think I understand sort of like people who get that interpretation, but I think that it's just the assumption. I remember you told me once. I remember you saying like your life is. It seems like you have a life of green lights. You said that to me once when we were working together. It said like your life is green lights, and
I also wrote that screed, by the way.
It was the wrong guy.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of the wrong guy this whole time.
This is what the show's about.
I've gotten some weird information that
Scooby-Doo mask.
So
Life of green lights. Yeah.
and so you told me that once, and I think that I understand. People think for whatever reason they're like, this guy hasn't worked hard for it.
Yeah.
This guy has had everything given to him.
Right.
This guy sort of like has a life of green lights.
Yeah.
And I think that causes people to say things about me,
Right.
to treat me in a certain way, to say things to me that they might not otherwise. And I think that sort of like it's because there is a like it was just all encapsulated in that sentence. Like he has had a really charmed career.
Sure.
And it's like has had, because what he's saying is like, you know, I just didn't get the cards. The cards were dealt to him, not me. And if it's not, and so like if I had the cards, like that's easy to do.
Right.
You know,
you
and
didn't
I
pay
think
your
that
dues, you didn't do the things.
yeah, and I think it's like, dude,
Yeah.
kiss my ass, say whatever you want, but
Sure.
like don't say that I haven't worked at this for a very long time. I haven't had anything.
Got it.
You know, I haven't had anything given to me.
Sorry about the green lights comment, man.
No, I don't mind. I don't mind.
do now.
I understand.
I feel terrible. I didn't even remember saying that.
No, it's fine.
I
But
remember
think that,
calling it an ass face, and I apologize for that. I didn't realize I was going to have to
I
apologize.
didn't even remember ass face.
It was something weird. Something.
I remember the green.
something
That
really,
shows you.
really
it shows
stupid.
you what obsessions people have and what other things go
but
away
this is
from
the thing,
people.
though. So I mean, it's just like, how do you get past those little things? Because
I wrote an angry email
yeah,
and I sent it, which was stupid. I shouldn't have done that.
right,
Mhm.
yeah. I've done several,
But
of
at least,
those.
it was very short. It's to the point. But as soon as I sent it, I was like, here's what you should have sent. Yeah.
but it's also, it kind of reduces you to a place that I think is so unhealthy too. Like I do have those fantasies still, and you know, I like it's been suggested that I bring one of those two people on the show, but I know I'm not equipped to do that.
Really?
Not yet. No, I want to be there. This
Yeah.
is like a starting point to kind of open that door for this, just to see if I can eventually get to that point. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not about forgiveness. It is about kind of self-forgiveness, I think, more than anything, like letting myself off the hook of that. I mean, that's the stuff that I really need to get to.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yes, I sort of like really, I sort of like so much of my work in therapy and just my life in general is just trying to be content and happy with sort of like what's going on within me.
Yeah.
And sort of like, I grew up very desirous of external validation. I grew up very desirous of sort of like praise from my parents and my father, and like validation from women, and sort of like validation from work. And all of that stuff was important to me. And so much of my work now is just spent on like making sure that I'm just happy, sort of and centered and like okay without all of these things. And I think that, it's rare when sort of I let somebody really ruffle my feathers like that.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. Like, I don't like the fact that I emailed that guy. I don't like the fact that I did the most, I'll tell you, this is the pettiest that I did.
Love petty.
Was I had my manager, this guy, the guy who wrote that has since published a book.
Uh-huh.
And I had my manager see how many books he sold and send me the book scan report. It was dick. It was very petty. But I didn't follow up on that. I just sort of like used that. I kept that information to myself. I won't
Should
even
we
share
sell the book now so we can sell some more?
I won't even share the title of the book, but it was. I won't say how many it was, but it was. That was a moment when I was like, this is pathetic.
Yeah,
but I did it.
No, I get it. Yeah, all fours, but not that. But no, but this is the stuff. This is the good stuff, right? Because has had take care of their baby, man, right? Same sort of like
that's I
atavistic
understand
response to something that it goes back decades, basically, right?
But that's also like, but I'm sure that the thing that, so I'm sure that what that is though, so like the reason that dude really upset me and that phrase really upset me is because it's sort of like a touchstone of things that like I've just felt like my entire life. So it's not even necessarily that guy in that moment.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's what you're saying. Like the like take care of that baby is sort of like, that's hitting something that you, when you were 8 years old,
100%. Yeah.
was going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's still something that is a secret that I don't want to have revealed, or like an insecurity that's being kind of brought up.
Yeah.
It's like being, a bad picture of you, and then someone is essentially just like calling out that there's a bad picture of you that exists, right? And that they know it, and you're not exactly ready to kind of confront that yet.
Yeah.
Were you kidding? Right.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. I think that all of it just seems like just being able to be. I'm not in recovery like you, but so much of it just seems like it's just like being able to find your peace within yourself.
Well, that's it, though, and I wonder, if you still, I think that's what I'm trying to get at, is just if you don't have that, and you have it, have you gone through it with other people where it's just been reduced to the point where it's just like, oh, is there a process you go through to make that sting less, and to make you less angry about that sentence and that view?
No, I think that I've been very, very, but I think that that's, it's fortunately not something that I think like plagues my life really anymore.
Yeah.
I think that when I think that ultimately what has ultimately made me, and I think this is a good exercise for writing too, right? Is sort of like, it's important as a writer to remember that when you're writing characters and human beings, the vast majority of people don't wake up in the morning saying like, I'm going to fucking make somebody's day shitty today.
Yeah.
Right? Sort of like, that's not most people. There's a thing called Hanlon's razor. And it is never ascribe to malice what could more accurately be ascribed to ignorance.
Right.
And sort of, so most people are just like, I'm going to go about my day, and they end up hurting somebody unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Even villains, even bad guys, they're sort of like, I'm going to rob this bank, but it's so I can feed my children. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a bad thing, but it's for good reasons.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of like try to think of people as human beings, just think of them as human beings. And I think that when I think of that thing that guy wrote that upset me, I think about like the mind frame that I would be in to write something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me sad. It makes me feel, I wouldn't write something like that about somebody, just because it doesn't, like I'm not trying to fill something. Sort of like that to me is something that you write when you're trying to fill something.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that like, I look at it as like, whenever sort of like, it's kind of like the This Is Water, the David
Foster
Wallace essay, where it's just kind of like, when somebody cuts you off in traffic, like try to imagine that their husband has bone cancer and they're freaking out. And so when somebody's like rude to you in line at the store, try to think that this is like their worst day. And like, just try to imagine these situations. And when I read that, I was like, this is the writing of somebody who's like, for whatever reason, frustrated, hurting in some way. They're writing to sort of like fill something. And I think that to me is sort of what I try to think about, is like, this is the work of somebody who I think is like, is like, the person who writes this is not necessarily like the most happy person. And so I think that like, this isn't coming from like the most happy place. This isn't coming from a place where it's like, I'm excited to write something mean about somebody and not put my name on it.
Some people get into that space where I think they do. I mean, there's a reason why there's a heavy amount of bonding that happens in any sort of office over just like shit talking someone, especially in just like in, your industry, and I think mine too, and a little bit whatever my industry is, the podcast community. No, I'm kidding.
It is. It's true.
Whatever.
Do you not feel like, can you get empathy for folk and flick and 100%. Can you feel like,
yeah. No, I can see that. It's just, I can't separate it from the feeling, right? I mean, I can absolutely see a world where, I have made people feel this way a million times worse than these people made me feel. I mean, and I know that. And I go out of my way to actually, look through certain things that are tough for me to look at because I know I gave someone a terrible day. I know I made someone's marriage very uncomfortable, or they lost a job because of something that I wrote, right? And I go through that and say just like, okay, what was the choice that I was making there? Yeah. And one of the scariest fucking things, and this is like not even a comparison at all, but this is what, thinking about this stuff, I was rewatching The Americans, and it was that episode where they break into some place and there's an old lady there, and the old lady, they have to kill the old women.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
So there's this dialogue where they're Russian spies and they're there to basically.
I know that. Yeah.
So there's a woman that they didn't know was going to be there, and she's an older lady, and they got to kill her, right? And he's not shooting her, so she has like pain medicine there. And the woman like makes her eat until she basically passes out, right? Yeah. And this woman asks, the Russian spy, like, well, why are you doing this? And she says, well, it's for the greater good, right? And she's like, do you believe that? And she's like, yes, I do. And she's like, that's what evil people say to justify evil things, right? And when I first heard that, all I thought about was just like, oh, the stuff that I'm doing for Gawker is so we can kind of just change and get to the larger truth here, the things that people are afraid to say.
Yeah.
This is what's required, is hurting other people, right, in order to get there. It was funny that that's what came up for me when I heard that line.
Yeah.
Even though it's I think there are much more relevant context for that.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah, but it haunted me in that way, but it forced me to kind of go back and look through some stuff and then really examine my choices about why I made certain choices, why I made certain hires, why I had to fire certain people and things like that. And a lot of the time it was so I could make myself feel better. Right? I don't know. I mean, there was no greater good. The greater good was essentially me. Right?
Yeah. But isn't that what it always is? That's what it always is. Like I'm not the kind of person who thinks that you can't make like mean jokes.
Yeah.
But when you make mean jokes, it's sort of like your friends understand it's a joke. Like when people insult people, it's always generally out of just pain. You're sort of like you wanted to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
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 I think that so much, that's what I was talking about with like the righteous anger of Gawker was, I think that for a long time, when Gawker, especially at the beginning, when it was just like a media blog and just talking about like editors and writers in New York, it was unsurprising that it was like a bunch of young kids, smart young kids who like they didn't have jobs at New York Magazine or the New York Times or the New Yorker, despite the fact that they were smart and talented. And so it's like, what a great place to make fun of everybody who has those jobs. It's sort of like at the fancy places that I would work at if they hired me, right? You know what I mean? Nobody at Gawker wouldn't have left for the Times when I was there if the Times had given them a job, But it was a nice place to sit and make fun of the Times,
Yeah,
before the Times, as you tried to get a job at the Times.
Which worked a lot.
It did. I mean, it still worked for a lot of people.
It did, yeah. But okay, how you feeling?
I'm like
than
an
a
8
7?
now. I'm an 8 now.
Are you
yeah, after
really?
being here, this
Well,
is an
that's
8. It's
great.
good to I'm here with my friend AJ. This is nice. I'm feeling good. I think, and it's
Okay.
good to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you got me to talk about my resentment, and I didn't think I was going to.
It's how we heal on this show. Thank you so much for doing this again.
Thank you. It's an honor.
This was
Always.
lovely. Yeah, thanks.
Having a good time.
Mhm.